I didn't expect to come out of YouTube retirement this early. I had a whole plan of videos I wanted to make, and that's still in the pipeline. But I felt like I had to come out early and make a little something, because right now what I'm seeing online is a tragedy. You see, lately, I've been playing Once Human. I'm actually about 36 hours into the game, and I'm addicted. But I couldn't call myself a game critic or a game analyst if I didn't admit this one simple truth. Once Human is a terrible game. I'm sorry to all the Once Human lovers out there, myself included. I wish I could say that this game was better than it was. I want to say that Once Human is a great game, but I can't. And the crazy part is that I go online and I look up the Steam reviews, and all I see are negative reviews about the game because of the privacy policy, or seasons, or the monetization. And although those are legitimate reasons to dislike a game, I don't think they're legitimate reasons to downvote a game and say that the game is bad. Because the problem is that these reviews are honestly pointless. People aren't going to really look at this and say, oh, a privacy policy, I'm not going to install now. Most people say, I don't care, myself included. All of my information is given to China, and if I ever wanted to run for politics, all they'd have to do is look at my incognito history. I don't really care about privacy policies. I don't care about my information. And I personally don't care about the seasons. So neither of those reviews are going to really tell me as a player that the game's bad. I'm probably going to see those and actually disregard those reviews. And I'm sure a lot of other people have as well, where they see these reviews and they say, hey, but this isn't the game. I want to know if the game's good or not. And the craziest part is, if you look at the positive reviews on Steam, people are raving about this game and how addicting it is. Now, it is addicting, but so is heroin. So to say something is addicting doesn't mean it's good. To say that I have lost sleep over this game and I have put 36 hours in a few days into this game doesn't say that it's a great game. It says that I have a rat's brain that gets programmed by positive reinforcement. Being addicted to a game is fine, and that could mean that it's a great game, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a great game. And every time I look at Steam, there's a ton of positive reviews about how much fun it is and how great it is. And all the negative reviews just say privacy policy, seasons, blah, blah, blah. But I rarely see negative reviews that talk about why the game is actually bad. So I'm here to give you the definitive answer. This game is ultimately a terrible game. And I hate to say that after the time that I've put into it and how much I am enjoying it, but it is a bad game and we need to talk about it. So in this review, I'm going to try and be as objective as possible, in my opinion. There are objective and subjective opinions about everything. And I know I'm not going to be able to avoid subjective opinions. It's just the nature of giving my opinion on the internet. But I think there is an important distinction to be made between the two. And that distinction is that the universal truth of things in Once Human are bad. Bugs are bad. Unfun combat is bad. You can like a shit sandwich. You may love a shit sandwich. You may be the connoisseur of shit sandwiches, but that doesn't mean that shit sandwiches are good. And I know people are going to criticize my gameplay and criticize the way that I leveled or the way that I built stuff. And everybody's experience with this game will be slightly different. You will encounter different bugs. You will encounter different ways of fighting enemies. Maybe you got a friend code that gave you a legendary gun, so combat is easier for you. But those things aside, it is a universal objective truth that no matter how hard or easy the combat in this game is, it is ultimately unrewarding and unfun to just look at an enemy and unload a clip without any sort of interaction between you or the enemy. And these are the sort of things that I'm talking about and I'm going to talk about in detail. So you can disagree with me, and that's completely fine. But that doesn't stop it from being the truth that this game is a shit sandwich. So let's get into it. Okay, so first off, I wanted to do a pros and cons list, and I wanted to start with the pros because I think it's important to put a good foot forward. I don't want to purposely present the game in a negative light just because of clickbait or calling the game bad. I want to objectively tell you why it's bad. But for every pro this game has, my list had about 3 cons to each pro that needed to contextualize the pro. And that's kind of this game in a nutshell when I'm going to start explaining things, is that everything that's good is riddled in bad, and you just can't get away from it, it seems. So I'm going to go point by point and pick apart each thing as a group. Okay, so we're going to start with visuals. So the good of this is the visuals are pretty good. Visually, the game works. It is a PUBG-esque, DayZ-esque survival crafting game with a sort of sci-fi horror theme thrown into it. It kind of has like a Stranger Thing vibes going on to it, which I think is pretty cool. It looks good. However, that's pretty much where the good of the visuals end. It's very surface level good and it all looks pretty. The introductory to the game and the plot, if you can call it anything, looks really good and appealing, but there's no depth behind it at all. I'll talk more in depth about enemy AI later, but there's nothing more to enemies other than looks. One of the first things you see when you drop into the main world is the bus enemy, and it looks really cool and is going to immediately grab your attention and draw you into this world of cool creatures, but the bus doesn't do anything. It literally just drops off enemies. It is nothing. You can't kill it. You can't fight it. Now, it's fine to have things in games that are just there visually. The bus doesn't have to do something crazy, but it's such a shame to have such a cool centerpiece of the game when you first get into it do nothing. It's just there to be a flavor on top of a nothing burger that is this game. So with that being said, let's get into the combat. First off, the gunplay sucks. It is just not a good system. The guns don't feel good. I don't know entirely how to put it, but I just recently played a lot of Back 4 Blood, which is the Left 4 Dead zombie killing game. And Once Human is also kind of a zombie killing game in a sense. There are a lot of zombie-like enemies. And the difference between the two when it came to gun feel is palpable. Back 4 Blood had guns that felt really good to play. It felt good to kill an enemy. In Once Human, I just feel like I'm unloading a clip onto an enemy until it dies, with no real interest or care about where I aim. There's nothing really interesting that happens when I kill an enemy other than the fact that they drop loot. But in games like Back 4 Blood or other shooter games, when you kill an enemy, it's supposed to feel satisfying. It feels like I'm just playing a glorified clicker game. The enemies range from piss easy to incredibly tanky, and none of the difficulty is in actual player performance. All of the difficulty is stat check. There were level 25 enemies in my area that are these big hulking mechanic guys with these blue health bars. And at this point, my server hadn't updated to the second week cycle. So I was limited to the first week cycle stuff. But level 25 is a 1 week cycle thing. And I had a legendary SMG on me, which is essentially a late game weapon. And I had it fully calibrated. So I fully leveled tier 3 legendary SMG. And it still would take me 2 to 3 clips to kill these guys. And all I would do is stand there and unload a clip and then hit reload and stand there doing nothing because the reload time is so long. There's nothing like you can't hit R during a reload mechanic to get a quick reload. I eventually got to the point where during my reload phase, I would go and loot because it just took so long to wait for reload that it just wasn't worth standing there. And it's not like you just duck behind cover during your reload and then it's a pop out and pop back. That's how normal shooters work, right? But the enemies miss so often, and honestly, you just really have to walk left and right and then you stop getting hit. And it's so stat checky. As long as you have good armor, you take no damage. And if you have bad armor, you take all the damage. And it's the same way with the enemies. Either I was one-shotting enemies by pointing and clicking at them and they did no damage to me, or they were at a million health and they wouldn't die, but they still wouldn't hurt me. Overall, it's just bland. It's not balanced and it's bland. And enemy AI is terrible. They stand and then they attack and then they stand. And this is incredibly prevalent whenever you do base raids where the enemies attack your base. Pretty much every enemy that spawns will attack and then stand there and do nothing and then wait for their attack animation again. It's as if both of you are doing the same thing. You attack with a short clip and then you take a long reload phase and then you attack with a short clip and they do the same thing. And it's just this idle clicker game of both of you standing there awkwardly during your reload phases waiting for something to happen. Also, grenades, in order to use them, you have to swap to them and then use them, and they are so bad, it's not even worth the time that it takes to swap to them, so throwables are just useless. I even at one point got a rocket launcher, and I swapped to it, and that takes forever, and then I load it, and that takes forever, and then I shoot it, and all it did was knock down the enemies and do almost no damage. For the base raids, the enemies were walking right through my walls, just completely phasing through them. And honestly, the visuals of the enemies are really cool. The enemies look really nice. I like them. There are some very cool looking enemies. I think that this is where the game shines. Once again, visuals are good. There's like a briefcase head monster and a light head monster and an umbrella head girl. And these are really cool. I really like this concept. But it's surface deep, which is this game in a nutshell. The combat patterns of these enemies are a joke. And the coolness of it gets so ran over by the boringness of it. The melee combat is good. Honestly, I'll give it credit there. The melee combat is good. It feels really good. It just hits right. Whoever made the melee combat deserves a raise because it feels great. And honestly, it's not a coincidence that when you start the game with melee and your first introduction to the game is melee, and melee is really good. It feels good to kill people with melee. They get pushed back. There's like a little bit of a stun mechanic, and you can like have these finishers. It's cool. But overall, the combat is a joke. And don't even get me started on PvP. I was in a PvP server, and there were multiple times where me and my friends died to snipers with no hit register, no sound, no redness on the screen, nothing. You just start losing health really fast and then die.
Oh, get him!
What?
So I'm very dead.
What the fuck just happened?
You're also very dead.
I died, like, out of nowhere.
Oh, did we, like, die because, like, I don't even know.
Oh, I left my boots! And it's completely stat checky, just like the game is. Either you have equipment and you kind of hit a threshold where enemies aren't one-shotting you, or you're being one-shot. And I know the high-level PvPers are going to tell me, oh no, it's totally balanced and blah, blah, blah. Listen, I think 36 hours into a game, I should know if a game's good or not. And if the game's not balanced 36 hours in, I highly doubt it's going to be balanced 100 hours in. Or even yet, do I want to get to 100 hours where it's balanced? Point is, PvP's a joke. It's really poorly balanced, especially at low levels. Maybe later it's great. I'm not sure, but it's a mess. A quick update. As I've been editing this, I'm still playing the game, so now I've made it a little bit further. I've made it to phase 2 of my server, so there's more PvP, there's more open world PvP, and I can confirm that the combat is in fact dog shit ass water. It is terrible. PvP is so bad. Now, many times I have won PvP and I have lost PvP, and out of maybe I've probably died and killed PvP people 50 times. Out of all of those, there was about 2 encounters total where it was actually balanced and based on our gunplay and our positioning, and the rest of it was just stat checky. It was either he killed me before his clip ended and then his long ass reload animation happened, or I wound up killing him before my long ass reload. It's the exact same problem as fighting enemies in PvE, just with a skin of a human player, and it's super unbalanced and it's terrible, and I still stand behind everything I said about combat even further now. Okay, so let's move on to the open world. The open world is nice. It's a lot of copy-pasted models. There's gonna be a lot of reuse of things. I eventually got to the point where I knew the layouts of buildings and certain houses you see all the time. But honestly, it's not that bad. I've seen more egregious copy pasted in the past, and I've seen better handmade stuff. Personally, I think it's not bad for a survival game because there is enough interesting things within each area that make it feel different. Some areas are covered with water and have like alligators as enemies, and some areas have farms, and some areas are desert. And there's enough interesting things that it doesn't bother me. The world itself, once again, visually is fine. However, that's where the open world kind of ends in its goodness. Each city has objectives, and it will be something like find the main waypoint. I can't remember the name of it. It's like an anchor or something. Find the anchor, find a mythic chest, find a weapon and armor chest, or 2 weapon and 2 armor chests, and something else like kill some enemies or kill an elite if there's a boss there or something. And this stuff sucked. It sounds good in theory. So here's theoretically how it plays out. You go to the anchor first because that's on the map. You activate the anchor. And then you snap, which is a thing that's supposed to show you anomalies. And there are anomalies on the ground that people leave, like Dark Souls notes from other servers that will tell you where something is. In theory, I think this is great. You go to the anchor, you snap, you see a thing that says, hey, the mythical chest is here. There's even a picture attached. You upvote it, that person gets rewards for giving a good review, and you get the mythic chest fast. That's great. And in the first like 1 or 2 areas you go to, that'll be the thing. But that's about it. Very quickly, there stops being any notes on the floor to help you because people just stop leaving them because people aren't playing the game past a certain level because of all the issues with it. And so for many areas, you're stuck searching for a mythic chest and 2 weapon and armor crates for a long time. And these aren't small areas either. Some of these are expansive areas and they don't give you a map marker to show you how big the area is. So you just kind of have to run around and look up at the top and see if you've left the area or not. There were many times where the mythic chest was in a building that I didn't even know was part of the area, but it was. And their obsession with platforming, they are obsessed with making you jump over things, and it's so bad. The platforming is so janky and so terrible. I don't know why they are obsessed with making you do jumping puzzles when it's not a game built for jumping puzzles. It's like somebody had an idea for where mythic chests should go, and they're like, wouldn't it be fun if they jumped up here, but then never actually played it and experienced how shitty it is to try and jump from place to place? Honestly, the most helpful Dark Souls message I ever got, or whispers, I think they're called in this, the most helpful whisper I ever read was that you can summon your vehicle anywhere, and to get a Jeep, and whenever you need to do a jumping puzzle, you can summon your Jeep to jump on it and jump over certain things, which is not how the game is intended to be played. And honestly, there were certain jump puzzles where I could not figure out how the game intended me to play because it felt like I had to do some really strange things to get to where I needed to go. And the whispers agreed with me. If there were any, they would tell me to do some asinine thing that made no sense to get up here. So overall, the open world, it's fun to explore. I really like opening chests and getting loot and getting blueprints and getting orange items. It makes me feel good. There's a dopamine rush to this game cycle. The way that this game works in certain aspects, and it works to the hamster brain in us that is on the wheel, and we get stuff. You go somewhere and you get what you want. I really like the fact that if I need a material, I can go to the map and I can look where to find that material. I think that's awesome. Games like Warframe, I criticized heavily because they don't tell you that stuff, or at least back when I played, you had to go to a wiki, and that is terrible game design. If there's ever anything that you need while crafting, you can look at it and it will tell you exactly how to get that item. It will tell you whether you need to craft it or what level area you need to go to farm it. And this, honestly, is the shining grace in this game. It is what makes the game addicting and likable. Do you need something? You can go get it. And I think that that's a great thing. I have zero complaints about that mechanic, but moving on. So next are the survival mechanics. The main thing I'm going to say here is that the servers, I found this out later in my play, that the servers have stats. I forgot when I originally picked the server that the servers have stuff on them that tells you the kind of mods they have. And right now, all of the survival mechanics on every server is tuned to easy, which tells me that in later seasons, when people get more used to the game, there will be harder survival seasons, which I think is honestly awesome. I really like this. I talked briefly earlier about how I like the seasons. I think seasons is a great way to play games like this. I really enjoy playing a game for maybe a month or two and then leaving it and coming back in a year and it being completely different because it requires the devs to keep changing things. And this is one of those instances where they're obviously going to create new servers with tuned mechanics. And I think that's cool. Having different levers to pull to just change the world is really nice. And then you can come back and have a completely different experience than you did last year. So I can't say much about the survival mechanics other than right now, they're pretty useless. Food and water is super easy to come by. It's not a survival game. If you want to play this because you like survival games and the difficulty of survival games, this is not it. The combat's piss easy. Farming food's piss easy. Getting water's piss easy. There's no difficulty in any of the survival mechanics. But overall, the mechanics work. Foods give you buffs. Water, it gives you water. There's nothing really inherently bad about this system, just that it's not tuned yet, and that's okay. Next up, building. This game weirdly gets a lot of praise for its building, but I'm not entirely sure why. Yes, it has better building than most building games. That's not saying much. I've played Ark, I've played Valheim, I've played a lot of building games, and this is, I mean, it's better than them, but like that's like being the fastest person in a handicapped race. It's not that impressive. I'm sorry. No offense to my handicapped viewers. Building in this game is better than most building. It's pretty intuitive, and I'm going to get to the UI in a second, but this ties into the UI, is that it's fairly intuitive. You hit B, and then it tells you on the left side all the buttons of what to do. You right-click to open the menu, and then there's a menu, and the menu's intuitive, and you press this thing, and you put it down. However, the snapping is terrible. There's no way to stop it from auto-snapping, and it is awful. Try to make a roof. If you think this game has good building mechanics, you didn't build a roof. You didn't actually make a roof with corners and stuff. Let me tell you, it is a nightmare having to try and get this thing to snap correctly. It is so picky. And doing wiring is It's, once again, it's weirdly intuitive, but awful at the same time. And I'm going to get to UI, but this seems to be a summary of the game, is weirdly awful, yet intuitive. All you do for wiring is you look at something while you're in building mode, press X, and look at something else and press X, and it puts wires to them. And it sounds super easy and simplistic and awesome. However, looking at something isn't necessarily looking at something, and you have to get the game to believe that you're looking at what you're looking at, and you can't go into fly mode. By the way, there's a fly mode in the building, which once again is awesome. I think that's great, but you can't wire in fly mode. So in order to wire something, you have to be looking specifically at a spot, and if there's already wires on it, your look will not look at what you need it to. It'll be looking at the wires instead. If there's a wall thing with like 4 wires attached to it, give it up. You're never going to be able to look at the wall attachment. You're only going to be looking at the wires. It's stuff like this. It's this jank. It's just, ugh. Anyway, the building's okay. It's not terrible. It's not great. It shouldn't be praised for being better than the bad bunch. Okay, moving on. User interface and user experience, UI/UX. As I said earlier, this game is surprisingly intuitive, yet over-encumbering at the same time. Let me explain. To get to the shops and the menus, all you have to do is press escape, and there's a list of everything right there. You can look at your events, you can look at the shop. It's pretty intuitive. However, it is so convoluted. There are so many menus. There are menus within menus within menus. And I understand it because there are a lot of things. There's the season pass, and then there's seasonal mechanics, and there's journey rewards, and there's this thing and that. There's so many different things that the game is throwing at you that I understand why there are so many menus, because you can't just put it all in one menu. And it is intuitive to get to those menus. You press escape and you can kind of see it. However, it's so cumbersome to have all these menus. It's so cumbersome to be like, hey, I just finished this quest. Which one is it again? And then you look into your journeys. That's not it. You look into your seasonal goals. That's not it. You look in, and you have a currency, and you're trying to figure out where to use it. And you have to go to an event, and then an event within an event, and then a shop within that event, and then that shop. And then you wind up spending your purple currency and not realizing that you can go to your wish machine. The game tries to convince you to just use your purple currency, which is your main currency to get blueprints. They never tell you can go to the wish machine and press G and outright buy a legendary blueprint. They convince you that you just have to gamble. It's stuff like this, where it's weirdly intuitive, but terrible at the same time. And I can't give it a pass. I can't say that it's okay when it's so clunky. There are so many small things like this. Just some of the small things are, you can't track attachment locations. There are ways to get attachments without doing the wish machine, and they're like riddles throughout the world, but you can't track where these riddles are, and the riddles don't show up on your map. So the only way is to go to a third-party website to find where these riddles are. And honestly, that seems counterintuitive to everything the game does, because everything else in the game is kind of within the game. So that feels like an oversight. When you create a weapon within the tiers, it doesn't tell you the level the weapon will be when you create it. I think it's like tier 1 is level 10, tier 2 is level 20, tier 3 is level 30, etc. But it doesn't tell you. So like when you're trying to figure it out, I made a tier 3 weapon when I wasn't level 30, and then I couldn't equip it, and I was kind of annoyed. PvP only lasts a few minutes. When you can opt into PvP by holding P, and it only lasts for 5 minutes. So honestly, open world PvP does not exist. No one will hold P long enough to be in combat with someone else. It just doesn't happen. Me and a friend were holding P all night one time, and we found nobody. Eventually, we just gave up. And I'm sure we ran into somebody at some point holding P, but at that point, we weren't. It's not a toggle. If it were hold P and then you're stuck in it for 5 minutes, and then after the 5 minutes you can toggle, that would make sense. That's what most games do. I would tag myself for PvP for fun. But because you have to do it every 5 minutes, you just forget between all the other crap that you're trying to do. It's just not worth it. The game's just buggy. There's floating walking animations. Driving is awful. Get in a car and just drive through enemies. You don't hit enemies. Things load in as you're driving. Like you'll be driving, and then out of nowhere, someone's building will load in, and you'll have run into it. And so you'll run into this invisible wall, and then you look up, and then the building's there. Inconsistency with messages showing. I had a bunch of messages show for me, and then I turn around and the messages are gone, and I couldn't re-find them no matter how many times I snapped, which once again, that's supposed to be the main way that you can find mythic crates and stuff like that. And it's just very inconsistent. I would have messages that my friend didn't see when we're literally playing next to each other. It's just all these small things that add up that make the game feel really encumbersome. There's this weird dichotomy with playing this game, and I don't know if other people felt this, but I felt while playing it. Me and my friend felt it the whole time, where it's telling you what to do the whole time, and yet I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to level weapons. I had no idea how to craft stuff. Once you understand it, it makes sense. Crafting, leveling weapons and stuff, the reason you can't trade weapons with your friends is because of the blueprint system. In the blueprint system, you search, you find blueprints and stuff, you find weapons that can't be blueprinted, etc. That all kind of makes sense. It all works once you get it, but you kind of have to get it. I feel like you have to get Stockholm Syndrome from this game in order to truly enjoy it. You have to get past all the ass by being on the hamster wheel and being drip-fed rewards that you have no idea what they are. And eventually you're drip-fed enough that you understand this weird economy and this weird world and this weird way things work. Overall, this is my final thoughts on the game. The game sucks. It's in a really bad state, but it's fun and it's addicting. If you have friends and you like crafting games, you're probably going to enjoy this game with friends. But it's objectively not a good game. It objectively has so many things wrong with it and so many issues that you will encounter constantly that I cannot in good faith call this a good game. Now, hopefully, they'll fix these things. I'm making this video because I want this to be a call to action from the developers. I want it to be fixed. I did all the reviews they sent me, and they sent me a really, really long review. And I did the full thing on stream. I did not piss out on it. And then I did another review that they sent me off stream. That's how much I care about this game. I gave a 10 to the would you suggest this game to other people? And yes, I would suggest this game to other people. I think people should try it. Is it good? No. But maybe it'll get good. And I want it to get good. And I want people to play. And I want you to spend your money on it. Because I want this game to get good. And I hope that devs actually care to improve it. Because at the end of the day, an open world survival game with open world, fun, balanced PvP just sounds awesome. This game has scratched an itch that I've been wanting for a survival crafting game, and I want it to be better. So that's it on Once Human. I appreciate you sticking around to the end. Like I said earlier in the video, this YouTube channel will be out of retirement soon. I will be making more videos, and maybe this will be the start of it. So hit that sub button, hit the like, all that good stuff. If this does well, maybe I'll make more. Maybe I'll make more reviews. I want to get into making reviews. It's what I love. I consider myself a game critic. I just don't make YouTube videos because I'm lazy.